Hello everyone and welcome to this new video. In case you're new here on the channel, it's been a little while since I've done one of these. So a few years ago I started this, well, I'm very loosely attributing the name of Series 2. But I started it a couple of years ago and I've tentatively called it Will It Die? So a few years ago I got interested in... Why is the neighbour's dog barking? Why? Chill! This dog has got no chill. So a few years ago I got into natural dyeing. I can't quite remember how or why, but I got really into foraging, or well, I've always liked going to outdoors and picking up things. So I'm a bit of a collector. And so I wanted to try natural dyeing. I didn't really know where to start. So the first thing I did, which is what I always do when I don't know where to start, was I bought a book. I can't remember why I picked this book. I think I just liked the cover. So I got this book. This is called The Modern Natural Dyer by Christine Vijar. And this is the book I've been using. Now, this book, I think, gives you a really brief and introductory look into natural dyeing, and then it breaks it down into projects, which is useful, but I that's not what I wanted it for. I just wanted to give me like the grounding of how natural dyeing works, and it did. And then what I sort of have done is that I like picking up stuff, so I just used it. It's not like, oh, I want to do natural dyeing with indigo or, you know, anything that makes sense. It's more like, what do I have in abundance that could be fun to try? So the first time I did it with Mexican mint, which was a plant I had growing in my house that I had no use for, and I actually had to trim down because it was growing too well, and I had all of these leaves and I had nothing to do with them, so I decided to try natural dyeing. The second one I think was pine cones. We just had a lot of them lying around in our local woods, so I just got a bunch of those. And then the third one was rowan berries, because I was living in Scotland and we had a big tree. We had several big trees of rowan berries in our garden, and there were loads of berries, and I noticed, you know, that there was more than enough falling to the ground and all, so I used some of that. Today we have a very similar situation, which is I moved back down to England last year, and we have this little back garden thing, and we've had a mystery tree that's really massive in the back of the little strip of garden, and it blossomed beautifully in the spring, and now it's borne fruit. I didn't really know what it was. I probably should have looked it up much longer ago. I don't know why I didn't, but I noticed the other day while I was out in the garden doing some weeding that it had loads of berries, and I probably should have noticed it before because I can see it directly out of this window whenever I'm here sewing, but I didn't notice it until I was right there. And so I got the way I identify trees is not that I'm all knowledgeable. I have an app on my phone, so I just took a quick picture of it, and it let me know that it is elderberries. And that got me really excited because I know that you can do lots of stuff with elderberries. So as far as I'm aware, you can use the blossoms to make a syrup, you can use the berries to make jam. You shouldn't touch any other part of the plant because it's highly toxic. So as always, if you are foraging or whatever, make sure there are a couple of rules. The book mentions it as well, so just make sure you're not picking up anything that's toxic to you or to whatever you're going to be using it for, and make sure you don't take so much that there's not enough left for the wildlife. So I'll show you the tree in a second. It's massive. I don't think we're going to risk doing either of those two things. And because we're dyeing fabric, you know, we're not consuming it, so I think you'll be very safe. And now a very brief overview of what the process is going to be like today. So there are 5 steps, 5-ish steps to dyeing, natural dyeing, that I got from the book, and also that adapted to this particular experiment. So the first one is weighing. So you need to get your fabric dry and ready and just weigh so that you can proportion other parts of this concoction. And then I've picked linen. I have loads of this lightweight linen that I thought would work really well. So I'm also limited by pot size. So in the past I've only done like a meter or so of fabric, but I wanted to be able to make maybe a dress with it. So I cut 4 meters of this linen fabric, and it just fits in the pot. So I've got 4 meters of linen fabric, which weighed about 800 grams. Step 2 is scouring, and this is when you wash the fabric so that you remove any treatments that the machines or or fabricas or oh my god, my English is gone. the factories like the factories or like any treatments that they might have done to the fabric, like coatings or whatever. You can do this by hand. I did it by machine because this fabric, once it is made into something, will be washed by machine. And then what I did was I just zigzagged all the raw edges of the fabric and I sewed it into a loop. I talk a little bit about this in a different video, but if you sew your fabric into is it called a Morbius loop? It won't tangle when you wash it. So I just sewed it into that loop and then I washed it in the machine. I let it out to dry and then I moved on to step 3 last night, which is mordanting. So a mordant is a natural fixative, that word. It's a natural thing that helps the dye adhere to the fabric. There are different ones that you can use depending on what kind of fabric you have. I used aluminum acetate, which is what the book recommends. I'd bought a starter kit of different mordants when I first started doing this natural dyeing thing a few years ago, and I needed a lot of it. According to this recipe, I needed about 48 grams or 16 teaspoons. And it turns out the bag I bought was 50 grams and I'd already used it once. So I have slightly less mordant than I needed, but it'll be fine. It'll be fine. And then all you do with that is you just put it in a big pot with hot water and you literally stir it for a few hours, let it sit for as long as you want. Between 2 to 24 hours is what the book recommends. I did this last night and so it's now been about 11 hours. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to prep the berries, let it sit, then I'll rinse it out. And then I'll prepare the dye bath. You can overlap these, but I only have one dye pot, so it's gonna have to do. And then step 4 will be the dyeing. So I'm going to go collect some berries before it starts raining, because you can never trust summer in England. And I'm going to wash them and prep them, and I'll talk you through a little bit of the process because I'm really excited. I love this kind of like natural experiments, and yeah, let's get to it. So I've literally just swiveled the camera around from where I was sitting at my desk so you could see the tree from my room. So that's the tree. As you can see, it's massive and it keeps going beyond the fence. So there's loads of berries. I obviously can't get to any of the ones at the top of the back, so I'm just going to take the ones that overhang our garden. And yeah, there'll be plenty left for the birds. So I've got loads. I don't actually think I've got enough, but I've kind of run out of what I can reach. So we'll see, and then maybe get a better step ladder than this year. This is just a quick moment to say, to be real here, we're going to take a pause because I just put all the berries in to wash and like 1,000 spiders came out of them and I'm borderline going to have a panic attack. So we're going to take a break. Okay, so it's been a few hours and I'm sorry about that, but I finally managed to calm down. The spider situation has thankfully been handled by my loving partner and we're back to business. So I've separated the berries from the stems and I'm just gonna mush them up in the morceau and pesto and then go into the pot for simmering for an hour. So that should be easy, right? So I've just added my fabric and I just wanted to show you what it's looking like. So initially when I first saw the berries up close and I squished them a little bit with my hands, I was hoping for a purple. Then when I saw the dye bath, it looked very red. And now I'm thinking it's probably going to be a pink. That's because red is really hard to achieve. And so I think from berries, it's most likely a pink tone. But I'm quite liking this. The tone of the bath is beautiful. So I'm just hoping that you can see the pot's really full, so I'm really afraid it won't dye evenly, but that's what you do. I mean, this is the biggest pot and only pot I have that could ever do anything like this. So here we are. So now I'm going to let it simmer in here for a couple of hours, and then I'm going to turn off the heat and leave it in the bath overnight. And then tomorrow morning I will rinse it out and we'll see what we have. So fingers crossed for nothing that is like a fading pink. I'd like something a little bit more like a purpley, like a berry, from a berry, imagine. Shocking, I know. So I have a fabric reveal for you. So it's been a little while. I had to rinse it out and I had to let it dry and iron, and I have some final thoughts before I show you the final colour. But there's a couple of things, there's two very specific things that I didn't do completely right in this project that really affected the outcome. Number one is I had too much fabric from my pot. This is something I knew from the beginning. I just really wanted to be able to make a dress from this fabric, because the previous times my pot can only really hold like 1 or 2 meters of fabric realistically. I had 4 in there, and so it did not dye evenly. It's very blotchy, very patchy. There's not anything to be done about this. Just make sure your pot matches your fabric quantity. It's that easy. The second thing I didn't do quite right is I didn't quite have enough dye stuff. So usually I think the ratio is for dye stuffs is you should have 100% equal to the weight of your fabric. And this is just guessing because obviously I didn't have a recipe for berries in the book, but generally dye stuffs at least 100%, so that you can have, the more dye stuff you have, the better the color basically. But because of the whole spider scenario, I didn't have quite enough berries and I didn't feel up to getting more. So that's how it was. And then the last thing is that I am pretty sure that the dye bath changed the longer it was happening. So if you noticed when I strained it earlier in the video, it was this like bright berry red. And then by the morning, it was this very dark purple grey. I don't know why. I think some dye stuffs can oxidize as well, or like change with exposure to oxygen and temperature. So I actually think I shouldn't have left the fabric in it for so long, because in the beginning it was dyeing sort of a pink color, a pink berry color. And then the longer I left it, the color changed. And so I left it on the stove for about 2 hours, and then I left it in the dye overnight off the heat. I'm still pretty happy with the colour it turned out. It's not, you know, quite what I expected or hoped, but here it is. So I don't know if the camera's going to read this very well, but it's a really pale sort of purple undertone grey. It turned out this really wintry, it's very wintry. I'm going to make a winter dress out of it, but I'm going to give you some proper footage of it. But it's kind of beautiful. I really do like it. And you can see it's very splotchy. And some bits are darker than others because that just means they had more time exposed to the dye, as you can see. But yeah, I'm still quite happy with it. I think I'm going to make sort of a like witchy winter dress with it when it comes around to November or December. And I think it'll look really nice, maybe with some embroidery, like on the cuffs, or like a little Peter Pan collar embroidered. I don't know, I think it'll look really cute anyway. I really enjoyed this, and I really liked elderberry as a dye stuff. I would definitely use it again. Spider excluded. and I think I would do everything properly. And I think I would really like to try the next experiment to be leaving it in there for less time. So maybe just the 1 hour, boil it in there for an hour, get it out, rinse, and see what happens, because I think that would give you a lighter berry tone. And I also think once you rinse it, so this is the thing, I'm always afraid of rinsing it after the dye bath because I feel like I'm rinsing away all the colour. And it was much darker when I got out of the dye bath before I rinsed it. But you kind of do have to rinse it. Anyway, I'm still pretty happy with it. I hope the camera will be nice to it. But yeah, I think it's really pretty. It's like this really, it reminds me of like winter on a frosty winter morning on a field at dusk, you know? That is what it is. Thank you so much for following along this experiment. I hope you enjoyed it. I really love doing this stuff. If I find any more easily accessible, abundant dye stuffs, I will do it again. We will have Will It Dye as long as I can find stuff to dye with. So see you in the next one.